This meeting
Uh,
is being recorded.
okay, we're all here, and let me introduce myself. I'm Lord Edric Longfellow. People have known me a long time. Actually, call me Edric because I mispronounced my name in my early days in the SCA. But the proper pronunciation is Edric Longfellow. I'm from the Kingdom of Atenveldt, which is Arizona, and I'm from the Barony of Tariskathir, which is Tucson. Um, I've been in the SCA over 30 years now. My first events were in 89 or 90, thereabouts. So I've been playing for a very long time. Um, like I said, Benedict and I have known each other even longer than that. We kind of joined up in the SCA together. And I don't know, that's pretty much who I am. And let me get going here. So what I wanted to talk about is a little bit about a Renaissance art. I'm not going to go into a lot of art history or anything like that, but I do want to talk a little bit about styles a little bit. And there's a style that a lot of Renaissance art uses called, I'm really mispronounced because I've only seen it spelled and not actually pronounced. It's chiaroscuro. Um, and basically what that is if you look at most pieces of Renaissance art, there's a black or dark background, and there's this feeling that the figure or the figures in the painting are coming out of the darkness, and in fact you can't actually see some of the lines between the figure and the backgrounds. For instance, in this painting by Van Eyck, called Portrait of a Man from 1483, if you look at its coat, you can't really even see where the coat begins, the background ends. And what that does is it makes it so your eye kind of draws the line for you. And what's good about that is that if you put in too many details in a piece of painting, you cannot draw as fine a details as the person's eye can. And if you kind of lose that line a little bit, your mind draws that line for you, and it actually looks like it's more detailed than it really is. And it's kind of what these kind of dark backgrounds and what a lot of Renaissance paintings did. This particular painting is in the National Gallery in London, and my wife and I actually traveled to London in 2019, right before the pandemic, and we went to the National Gallery and we saw this painting. We originally went to London to see a special exhibit of Da Vinci's artwork and his journals and his writings and stuff like that. We bought the tickets well in advance, and we wanted to see the special exhibit, which was put on for the 500th anniversary of Leonardo da Vinci's death. Now, my wife does a wonderful presentation about Da Vinci, and she presented that at a collegium years ago. And I'm trying to convince her as best I can. She's listening to me a little bit here. I'm trying to convince her as best I can to actually do that presentation for you guys, because it's a great interactive thing. And I don't know, if I give her some encouragement, she might actually do it. I don't know. But anyway, that's this painting, and this painting is a very period piece. It's from the 1300s. And the next piece I want to look at is let's see if I can page.
Yes, please, to your right.
There we go. This next piece is by Rembrandt. It's slightly out of period. Rembrandt, cut off for a period, of course, the 1600s. And so this is 1659, he was kind of middle-aged a little bit, and this is one of his self-portraits. And I want to talk a little bit about indirect technique a little bit. There's indirect and there's direct technique. And of course, back, when they're doing period painting, they didn't call it indirect technique, they just called it technique. And basically what that is, it's layer upon layer of transparent and opaque paints that are layered on top of each other to give this sort of depth to a painting. So I don't know if you've ever tried to copy a Rembrandt painting, but if you try and copy his background and you try to mix up some opaque paints to lay in that background, you will never succeed at that, because it is not just one paint or two paints, two pigments. It's actually layer upon layer of pigments. And the way they would do that is they would lay down a dark layer of transparent paint, and then they might go through mix with medium, and then they might go through, after that dries, and put another layer of medium down and take a little bit of opaque paint, and they would work that into the painting really slowly, and it would start, kind of bright where they laid the opaque paints, and as they worked their way out, it would get thinner and thinner and more transparent and translucent until it became transparent. And you can actually see that in this painting, where in this background, it starts at the top, you can see the opaque paint, and it slowly works its way into the transparent paint and the transparent pigments and medium and stuff like that. And so when you see this, it is layer upon layer of painting. You will never be able to mix this up in one or two pigments. Your eye sees through it like a piece of glass. And when you see these paintings in person, there's a depth to them that you can't get anywhere else. And that's indirect technique. And so, as they work, toward the faces and the clothing and stuff like that, they will use these different layers, and it gives it kind of a sculptural look almost, especially when you see these paintings in person. Now, Rembrandt was a master because he used something that we call now islands of light. And if you look at this painting, his figure is in darkness, but his face is lit, almost like there's a spotlight on it. But if you look down at his hands, which are still kind of shadowy a little bit, that is also a little brighter. And he would use these brighter and darker islands of light to move your eye around the painting. And he was a master at that. And he was one of the few people that really took that to the extreme. Now, this painting obviously still uses the chiaroscuro technique, in that if you look at the back of his coat, it's hard to tell where that coat ends and begins, but in your brain, you're drawing that line better than he ever painted it or ever could paint it. So let's talk a little bit about Caravaggio a little bit. So I got a chance to see this painting in Rome at the Borghese Gallery, and it's a big painting. It's actually quite huge. And Caravaggio, if you know anything about him, he was kind of a scoundrel. He would get in fights, bar fights, trouble, and he actually got accused of murder at one point, and he was wanted by the authorities. And he painted this painting to sort of say, I offer you my head in repentance for this murder that I'm accused of. And the head is actually a self-portrait of himself being held by the figure of David. That the history of art is almost as exciting as the art. These stories, they're wonderful stories, and I love to read them and to hear about them. So let's look at one of my paintings. This one is called Self-Portrait with Cote Hardy, and I used some of these techniques. Now, this isn't a very good photo of this painting. I've tried to take many photos of this painting, and what you actually can't see is that in the darker part of the tunic, there is this layering technique of medium, of opaque paints on top of transparent paints on top of opaque paints that gives it that kind of depth. And when you see it in person, you see that, and it becomes very apparent that I borrowed that technique from the old masters. Now, I used a little bit of hand ground pigments in this because I wanted to play around with that. Not all the pigments are hand ground because I didn't have the reds and the cadmiums and all that kind of stuff. I basically ground some of the earth pigments and and ultramarine blue and some other ones. And this painting was also one that I showed at Estrella. I did not enter into a competition. What I did is that they used to have something called an artist showcase, where the artists would show off their paintings and their works, and people would come and see them. This was the only painting that was in the showcase. There were no other paintings. There was a lot of embroidery. There was a lot of scroll work. There was a lot of, but painting, in my opinion, is very underrepresented in the SCA. There are some places I'm finding out that do have painter skills and stuff like that, but in Atenveldt, there is definitely not that type of thing. And I wish there were. I would love it if more people painted, and there was because it's a very period thing to do, and I would love it if that became more popular. So that's self-portrait wearing coat hardy. One of the other things I wanted to point out this, and I'm going to ask you guys a question before I move on. What in this painting is not period? And what is the one thing that's glaringly not period in this painting?
It's your glasses.
Exactly, 100%. And I question whether or not I should have included my glasses or not, but I wear glasses and it's part of who I am. But I did it in such a way that I was not actually looking through the glasses. I was looking over the glasses so you could still see my face. And I thought it was a pretty good, technique, but it is the one thing that it's not period in this painting. So this is another painting I did that uses the same techniques, this kind of chiaroscuro techniques. And this is our household, Benedict and I's household. Benedict is not in this painting, but a lot of members of our household is there. And so, when you're at an event, a war, a stray war, whatever, and it's that moment that everybody kind of, you're back at camp and it's at night and everybody says, let's go wandering. Does anybody want to go wandering? And you organize yourselves and you all have tankers and you're ready to go out and hit the nightlife. And that's a moment that I wanted to capture in a painting. Now, Estrella, obviously, many have heard is now gone. There will be no more Estrellas. So it's more important than ever that I feel like I should document this stuff. It's something that we all hold dear, but it's also something that 100 years from now, 150 years from now, people are going to look back and they're going to say, what were these people doing? What were they thinking? It captures a moment that people will be reliving after we're all long dead. And to me, that is part of what makes painting interesting, because when I go to a museum, I love to see these old paintings, and I think often, who were these people? What were their names? What do they do for a living? Who was their kids? Who were their friends? I think that all the time when I go to a gallery, and I hope that one day at least one person will look at these paintings and think the same thing and understand that each one of these people had a personality and they were all individuals. And as a group, we are such a wonderful group, House Tag Stern. So not every painting that inspired me is period. This is a painting by Jean-Léon Gérôme called The Dance of Alma, and it comes from 1863. And in the mid to late 1800s, there was a movement in painting called Orientalism. And that was, in their paintings, they would depict Northern Africa or Middle Eastern subjects and ideas. And, Renoir did some Orientalism. It was a very popular thing that came about around that time. And I did a painting that was inspired by this piece called Hofflin and the Outlines. Now, this was depicting a party that used to occur at Estrella on Thursday night. It was put on by the Kingdom of the Outlands, which was one of the principal kingdoms at Estrella. And and I wanted to capture that moment, but it's interesting to capture that moment. It looks like a scene with a story and all that kind of stuff, but it was actually done from 7 different photos that were all mosaiced together in the computer to make one scene. You know, the dancer was one photo, the fire was one photo, the gentleman to the right with the turban was one photo, the tents were one photo, and so on and so forth. And compositionally, I put them together to make this final composition that it looks like it's just a moment caught in time at Estrella, at the Outlands party. Now, if we look at the compositional elements of this, what do you see? What are some of the things you see? This is a question I'm throwing out to you guys.
Well, the dancer's hands and the turban of the fellow by the fire pit, the turban and the hands.
Right. So the hands of the
Yeah.
dancer, who are they pointing at?
The musician, of course.
Yeah, the gentleman with the accordion.
Accordion.
But if you look at the figure behind the dancer with the hands, he also has an arm that he's holding a tankard. And where is that tankard pointing? Points straight to his head. Now look at the fire. The fire is pointing straight to his boot. So really everything is pointing to this gentleman with the accordion. And compositionally, that is what I wanted people to see first. And compositionally, it works pretty well. You know, it's something I thought about as I was putting these together, to make sure that people's eye were directed around this painting. And that's Hoffland Outlands.
I like.
So this is another painting I did. Oh, I'm sorry.
I like the use of light in that, where the tents were highlighted. And
See if I can go back to it. There we go.
you've got the white keyboard on the accordion, the light
Right.
hitting the dancer's arms, the light off of the tents and in the flames. I like how that contradicts the darkness of the rest of it.
Exactly. If you look at the tent that's mostly white, it's right behind the gentleman with the accordions, you know, his head. So it pushes out his head. So that's one of the first things you see.
And the drummer too is fairly well highlighted.
Right. Yeah, those are great observations. Yeah, this was a fun painting to do. It's actually quite big. It's 48 by 36. It's the largest painting I ever did. And in person, it's a very imposing painting. You know, they're not as large as life, but you know, it really makes a statement when you walk in the room.
Do you think that the people in those photographs would recognize themselves in your portrait there?
Actually, they do. I've posted this painting to various discussion groups and stuff like that. And one person said, "Oh my gosh, there's my husband." And the gentleman with the turban playing the drums, she's like, "That's my husband." And Santiago, the guy playing the accordion, I actually showed him this painting one time at an Estrella. He was taking a break from playing his accordion, and I brought it up on my phone and said, "I painted you." And I showed it to him, and he thought that was great.
Very nice, thank you.
Absolutely. So this is another painting that I did. It's called "Let's Eat and Drink While There's Oil in the Lantern." I did this as a commission. This one actually does have Benedict in it. If you look at Benedict with his mouth open, the likeness isn't too bad. The other gentleman, his name is Salvatore, and the one with the knife in his mouth. And I actually did this as a commission for him. Now, this painting, I didn't use the chiaroscuro techniques, you know, and you know, I wanted daytime painting. And it's that time, you know, when you're back at camp during the daytime and you're cooking or being kind of silly, and it's that camaraderie that people feel inside of a household when they're camping. And like I said, I wanted to document feelings and memories and all the kind of things that Estrella gave to us, so that people in the future, kind of look at that and say, wow, these were amazing events, and I wish I could have been there. That's what I want people to think of when they look at this 100 years from now.
We're seeing kind of a Norman Rockwell echo here.
A little bit. I can see that for sure. Absolutely.
I love that, because Rockwell was always a snapshot of life.
Exactly. That's a good observation. I like that a lot, actually. I'm a big fan of Norman Rockwell. He was a good artist.
That Norman Rockwell comment makes me love this all that much more.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
It was a hard painting to do, actually. I really struggled with it. My wife can, she was definitely aware of my struggles, because I would after a session, I would be like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can pull it off. And even toward the end, I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work. This might be the worst painting I ever did. And now looking back on it, I really like it. And it was a fun painting to do. And we all have struggled as artists, to with our own works. But when you look back at them later, you're like, that wasn't too bad. And I don't know, that's what I feel like when I see this painting.
I really like it. It's alive.
Yeah, you definitely see the moment, this moment in time when these people were just having fun.
How long does it take you to do one of these paintings?
That's a very good question. I think I'd have to look it up. I think this painting had about 8 sessions at 3 hours a piece. So what does that come out to? So is that 8, 16, 24?
24 hours.
24 hours of work?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It would take me a lifetime.
Say that again?
It would take me a lifetime.
Nah, it just, I don't know. I mean, some people, it does, like Da Vinci worked on the Mona Lisa, for decades. It was his passion. He would work on it just a little bit, just add just a little, he would see it, but nobody else would see the pigment that he added. He worked a long time on that painting. So let me talk about my non-SCA paintings a little bit. First, before we do that, I'd like to talk about Renoir a little bit, and the Impressionists. So the Impressionists, there are a couple things that come out of the Impressionists. One is, before the Impressionists, there weren't a lot of landscapes being done in paintings. There was a little bit of here, a lot of, like maybe a scene of inside a castle looking out, on the grounds or whatever, but the perspective wasn't very good. And does anybody know why landscapes became so popular with the Impressionists? Has anybody heard about that or thought about that? There's actually a very specific reason for that.
We are clueless here.
So one of the things that got invented in the mid to late 1800s is the metal tube for pigments, for paints. And it made paints portable, so you could actually take them out into the field and outside, and it made painting portable, where before that, painting was not portable. It was you had to grind your paints and and all this kind of stuff, and they were maybe held in jars, or it was not a portable thing. And it was the invention of the metal tube that allowed artists to go out in the field and make these paintings. And the other thing that I'd point out is, you ever wonder why Renaissance paintings are so brown and so they're not very bright, and why the Impressionist paintings are so bright and so colorful?
Well, it was either dark in the castles or they had better paint.
Actually, there's another reason. One is there were a lot of new pigments that came about, and not all of them worked. Like Van Gogh, the famous painting of his room with his bed and all that. If you look at the background of that painting, it's blue, but when he first painted it, it was purple, and that contrast between the purples and the yellows was important. That it was important, but the paint that he used was not color fast, and it faded. Actually, in his lifetime, it had faded to a blue. The reds in it had faded. But the Impressionists are interesting, for those reasons. And there's an evolution in paint, and those early period paintings with the chiaroscuro and all that kind of stuff. There's a reason why they're browns and not very bright. They use a lot of earth pigments, a lot of literally pigments from the earth, and they were dirt almost. They were processed a little bit, but it was that's what the paintings or the paints were made out of. And the brighter colors and the more technology came about, that's why the Impressionist paintings were so bright. So this was an attempt to make a brighter, more impressionistic type painting. It's moderately successful. But that's my daughter in the painting, and she's holding two pumpkins, and that's a pumpkin patch here in Tucson. And if you look at the painting that I display by Millet on the right, where are the similarities between these two paintings?
In the way the perspective is.
The perspective, that's a very good observation. And there's the little trees in the background, but also if you look at the figures in the background of my painting, they're bent over figures picking up pumpkins from the pumpkin patch. And the Millet's, the Gleaners, they're picking up, straw on the ground, and that was a direct influence on that. Those little figures was this painting called The Gleaners from 1857.
I really wish my mother was still alive to be able to view this. She was a painter, which is...
Was she?
Yes. My mother and both my mother and my aunt were, and they would love this. I'm sitting here looking at this, thinking how much my mother would really have liked this.
Wow.
So
that's great.
Unfortunately, I don't see the world the rest of the way that people do, and my tendencies with perspective and lighting tend to get very strange.
Gotcha.
So, but they're gorgeous, and I'm, the daughter of painters, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah, that's great.
So, thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad to share. I've never really done a presentation about my art like this before, and it's nerve-wracking, but it's also a lot of fun to show off, and I enjoy it when somebody gets a chance to enjoy what I've done.
As Lady Amber was saying, it made me think that the paintings reflect the perspective, the personality of the painter to a degree as well.
Right.
I mean, we all know about the Blue Period and similar things from Van Gogh.
Right.
His emotions were reflected in his artwork. And
absolutely.
so you're sharing your daughter here with us, and there's some joy in that.
Absolutely. It was
Her
fun to
expression.
do.
You know, the expression you've given her is joyful, but it lets me feel the joy from the painter as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope when she looks back on this painting, she gets to see how I saw her. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
That's so sweet.
So not every painting is a painting. This is a sketch of my wife. When she and I first met, I did it in my journal. And
Oh,
you know, this is the person I fell in love with, you know, and it's a
so
very
sweet.
special drawing to me.
That's so romantic.
Aw. She's listening to me.
And we're listening to her too. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
She's a very pretty lady.
There is a painting of my wife right there. This is Maria in the at the University of Arizona in the afternoon.
There's a lot of
Now,
joy in that one too.
let
What
me
did
see.
you say? Maria
There's a lot
said,
of joy in that one too.
Let's see if I can, can you guys see the painting on the right, the Vermeer painting, or is that covered up?
Yes.
No, I can see the painting.
Okay, right now that's covered up by everybody's videos to me, but if you guys can see it, I'll talk about it. So if you look at the painting on the right by Vermeer, and you look at the painting that I did of my wife here, what is the similarity there? Because they're not very similar paintings at all, but there's something very important in these two paintings that that when I saw this Vermeer painting that I wanted to capture in this painting of my wife.
Is
I
it the
was
light and the shadow?
It is the
Oh.
transparency in the bonnet. If you look at the light shining through that bonnet, the hat that my wife is wearing is translucent. And so the sun shining through that hat, I wanted to capture that light and make it look like she was wearing a hat that was translucent, that you could see the sun coming through that. There are some other things that I can point about this painting too. One is normally my paintings use warm shadows and cool lights, and mostly because they're indoor. But this painting is in bright sunlight, and the light shining on her arm and her shoulder, they're yellow lights. They're late afternoon as the sun's coming down. That warm light is coming down, and if you look, you know, at her arm and her legs and all that, there's a little bit of blue in that. There's a little bit of blue pigment in there that cools that all off. And it was something I wanted to do, but it was difficult because I was not used to working that way. And if you see the blues and the shadows coming off of her arm and, you know, on the sidewalk and stuff like that, that was also an attempt to use cool shadows rather than warm shadows. The other thing that will influence this painting is the Van Gogh had a lot to do with this painting, and that's all the plants in the background that I really wanted to use this thick, chunky paint, you know, very expressionistic kind of paint that he used. And whether it was successful or not, I don't know, but there was some influence there for sure. All right, let's move on to the next one. Uh-oh. What happened? Are you guys still there?
Yeah,
I'm here.
I'm here.
Something just happened there. I just got an error. Sign into your account to use Zoom apps.
Oh. Well, that's curious.
Ah,
You're
there
still
we
with
go.
us.
Can you see the?
Oh, that's
A master.
This is not my painting.
Oh, that's cool.
This is a painting by Vladimir Dimitrov. He was also known as the Master. So my wife was born in Bulgaria, and in Bulgaria, there's a very famous area in Bulgaria where they have apples. You remember in there? Anyway, it's very famous for its apples, and this painter did a series of paintings in this area of Bulgaria of young women picking apples, basically, and I was influenced by that, but there was more to it than just that. So this is my painting that was influenced by that. And obviously it doesn't have the bright greens and stuff like that, but this is a very important painting, because my wife found this old photograph, probably 60 years old, maybe even older, of her grandmother, and which is her grandmother with her namesake. Her grandmother was named Maria as well. And she was sitting on a bed of apples. She was holding apples, and she wanted to see that in color. So I did, and it's a relatively big painting. This painting of her sitting on this bed of apples, and they look more like peaches than apples. I don't know. That's my own judgment, but it brought that photograph to life, and it was an important document of the fact that it wasn't just Bulgaria, but it was communist Bulgaria, which was, important to me to portray. And, because that was a short period of time, in Bulgaria. And if you look at all of Bulgarian history, it wasn't very long, but it was a very important time. And it was very important to my wife's family, who grew up in that communist time. And, 100 years from now, 150 years from now, they'll be reading about Bulgarian history. But they'll always look back at this painting and say, wow, that's what it was brought to life. And so this is a very important to me, important painting to me.
I think
This
it's
is one of-
lovely.
It is a favorite painting of mine. It's got these kind of warm colors, it's probably too warm, too much yellows, I don't know, but it was an important painting to do. So I'd like to talk a little bit about an event that happens here in Tucson. It's not an SCA event. It's called the All Souls Procession. And the All Souls Procession happens the first weekend after Halloween, which is a very special time in a lot of religions, a lot of cultures and stuff like that. And this event, people celebrate the dead, and they carry pictures of loved ones who have passed on, and it is kind of a parade of sorts, except that all participants are encouraged to join in. It's not a parade that you watch, it's one that you walk and you're involved in. And it's I call it celebrative mourning. There's a festive atmosphere of it, but there's also a reverence at the same time. And so these are some photos from that, and I'll show you some paintings that I did from these photos.
Oh, I miss that parade so much.
Wow.
This is people dress up in costume when they walk the procession, and they also paint their faces, and it borrows a lot from the Dia de los Muertos traditions of Mexico, where people will paint their faces and white with black eyes and the kind of sugar skull look that a lot of the Mexican art has. And there's a lot of Mexican folk art that depicts all this. And these are not the only thing that people dress up. I mean, there's people on stilts. There's all sorts of, almost a carnival-like atmosphere to it. But like I said,
mixed Mardi Gras with Muertos.
Yeah, exactly.
Muertos, and you've got the day of this parade. It's really a lot of fun. I'm from Tucson.
Oh, great. Yeah. It's been going on for like 30 years now.
Yeah.
It's not an old tradition, but it is, an important tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So here you see people actually in the procession walking, and you can see all the signs and pictures and and stuff like that. You see people with their painted faces. And a lot of people come to this thing. If you look at this photograph, there's 150,000 people that come to this thing. And people, it's not just people from Tucson, people come from all over the world, all over the United States, just to walk in this procession. And at the end, they have a ritual where they collect mementos and prayers and pictures of loved ones who have passed, and they put them in a collection sphere called the urn, and they burn it at the end of the night to send all these souls, if you will, to the heavens.
Wow, it's beautiful.
So I wanted to document this, and it started out with this painting on the left called Mirror. And that is one of my wife putting on makeup. And like I said, there's all sorts of folk art around the procession, but I had never seen a fine art piece where somebody was putting on the Dia de los Muertos makeup on their face. And when I saw that photograph, or when I took that photograph, I said, I've got to turn that into a painting. That has got to be a painting. That has got to document this event. And it became the first in a series of paintings I did. The following year, I did one of myself looking in a mirror. It's called Selfie because I'm actually taking a photo, but it's kind of funny because I'm not actually taking a photo. I'm doing a painting of myself, which is kind of a weird twisted logic or whatever. But it is me with the face paint on, and these two are about a year apart. I've also played with some expressionist style paintings using impasto techniques, which is this kind of thick, chunky paint. And these are untitled studies. They're not very big, but the idea was to do something loose and not this tight, Renaissance style paintings. It was to be loose and free and crazy and expressive and dainty, if you will, and they're small studies, so I could make mistakes, and it was okay. They're not a masterpiece, and so that's where these two paintings came about.
Those are lovely.
If you look through our chat periodically, Alan's made some comments that we should have caught. He shared a link for Donna Katrina, I believe that's what it says. And
That'd be Donna,
again, Alan?
Donna Katrina. Donna Katrina was a common figure used by Jose Guadalupe Posada, who's the artist who really owns Dia de los Muertos. You can hardly talk about artwork of Day of the Dead without talking about Posada and Donna Katrina.
Wow, I would like to look that up, actually, because I've been inspired by this. I would like to find other, especially fine artists that have done this type of work.
I will save the chat in a recorded link, and I'll put it in the comments under this event. So
Okay.
after, it'd probably take me overnight to get that done and posted, but then tomorrow you'll be able to go and pull up the links, and you'll see that link that Alan posted for it, so you could look it up.
That would be great. I would love that. For sure, I would love that. I can't wait to see it. So talking a little bit about the painting on the left with the gentleman on stilts. So when I told you about how they collect the prayers and the pictures and the little things that people write about their loved ones who have passed on. That was that thing that he's carrying, I don't know what you would call that, the bucket, or I don't know what the right word for that. That's what that is. What's that?
Would it be a reliquary?
I don't know. That's a good question. But anyway, that's what they collect those in, and at the end they pour those into the urn. They used to be you could walk up to the urn and put things in the urn as it went by, but the urn is on wheels, and I think they don't want people get run over by the thing, so now they collect them this way. It used to be more, in some ways, more meaningful to put it in there and yourself, but they don't let you do that anymore. So this is another painting I did about this event. And when people are marching the procession, a lot of times there's different groups. You know, you'll have Christian groups or sometimes mariachi groups, or maybe a high school or something like that. And there's a particular group of women who are flamenco dancers, and they march and they move their skirts around as they march. And in this painting, you can see all the people on the sidelines, looking on at the dancers as they walk by. And it's called Skirts on Fire because you can't focus on their skirts. They're just there's so much movement going on. But you can see here, they all have their painted faces in that kind of sugar skull kind of makeup. And this was a fun painting to do. And this is another one that I really struggled with. It's a little looser than what I usually do, but I had a hard time with it when I first did it, but now I look on it and I have fond feelings about this painting. And a lot of times, after you're done with the painting, sometimes it takes a while for you to really appreciate it or whatever, because as artists, we are always, judgmental of our work.
Kind of your own worst critic.
Right, in many ways, exactly. So I've been fortunate enough to travel in my time, and I've done a series of paintings about my travels. So this first painting called La Rambla, actually a little story about this painting is when my wife and I first met, I sent her to a website that I had this painting up, and this was her favorite of my travel paintings that I'd done, her favorite of my travel paintings that I'd done. And I gave it to her. When we first started dating, I gave it to her, and now, obviously we got married and all that kind of stuff, and it's on our wall now. But it was a very special painting because of that, and this painting's of Barcelona, and there's a very famous street there called La Rambla that it's a sidewalk, if you will, but it's the roads are on either side of this large sidewalk, and there's all these vendors and people all walking up and down the street. And it was I don't know, it was a fun painting to do. And it has this dappled light, and there's these trees that are overhead in La Rambla, and the sun casts through these lights, and there's a lot of shadows with this dappled light that covers the street. But oops, let's go back. But that was not the only painting I did. When my wife and I first met, I was doing a painting of Latin Quarter in Paris. And as it turns out, around the same time, she had gone to an estate sale and actually found a painting of a street scene in Paris. And it was a strange coincidence that I was working on a street scene in Paris, and she had found this street scene in Paris. And so where I gave her one of my paintings that she really enjoyed, she gave me that painting that she found, because she knew that it was, I don't know, it was this amazing thing, this amazing connection we had. And so I wanted to put both those in there so you could see them side by side.
I like that. It looks not just Paris, but it looks like any large city like Portland or
Right.
Seattle, with the sidewalk cafes and the hustle and the humanness of it.
There's actually a little mistake. There's probably a lot of mistakes, but there's a major mistake in the painting that I did, the cafe scene that I did. And but it had to be done this way just because people read from left to right, and that's the guy on the motorcycle on the scooter is going the wrong direction. If you were actually to go to that street, the traffic on that goes the other direction. But because people's eyes move from left to right, he had to be faced that direction. So it's actually kind of a funny little mistake, but it had to happen.
Artistic, what do they call that? Artistic license. Thank you.
Yep. So not every road in Europe is a road. So where do you think this painting, what do you think it depicts here?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Venice.
You would think
Denmark.
so, but look at the name of the painting. That is not Italian.
I'd say Amsterdam.
That
Amsterdam.
is Amsterdam.
Netherlands.
That is a Dutch. Boten van de Zomer means the boats of the summer in Dutch. It is of Amsterdam, absolutely.
I think Amsterdam has almost as many canals as Venice,
Yeah, almost exactly.
but it's not sinking.
Right, that's true. That is very true. Okay, so this is the last of my street scenes that I wanted to show you guys, and this was actually painted after my wife and I went to London, and it is the street scene in Soho, in the Soho district of London. There's a French cafe there called, and I'm going to mispronounce it because I can't pronounce anything, called Maison Bertau, or I don't know how to pronounce it. But you know, it's the same kind of street scene, people sitting out in a cafe, and you know, people wandering the streets. And it's interesting, we talk about composition and layout. You know, I do a lot of work in the computer before I do a painting. I work out all my compositions in the computer. And if you were to look at the original photo of this gentleman in the foreground with the bald gentleman, he was actually sitting at the back table, and I moved him forward. But it had to happen. It's just the way the scene had to be. So this
Before
is
you go too far, Alan's been commenting, and in your previous slide where you're talking about going the wrong direction, he said in the movie series Lord of the Ring, Frodo and Samwise always moved from left to right.
I didn't know that.
And then forward again to where you were, he said it looks like Van Gogh.
You know, I guess if this were in Jerusalem, it would have to go from right to left. I don't know, just saying.
But back to where you
Oh.
were, he said it looked
Right,
like Van Gogh.
exactly. So anyway, that was this painting, and you know, it was a very special trip for us. You know, I've talked about it before, but this is a very special painting to me, and it's in that impressionist style, and I enjoy it very much. And it has the brighter colors. I actually there was a pigment I used to use in my paintings. It's called transparent oxide brown, and I actually, starting with this painting, I decided I was not going to use transparent oxide brown anymore. I was going to use transparent oxide red, because it was a little brighter and a little less orange or brown or whatever, and it made the painting that much brighter.
Run out of breath. Okay.
So somebody asked us earlier, what am I working on now? So let me show you guys it. And this painting is not done. This is not done. It's still in work, but it's a back to basics a little bit. So this is uses that same chiaroscuro kind of style, that older style that I did for a long time. And like I said, it's still in work. It's almost done, but it is back to Estrella again, sitting around the fire, you know, where people are telling stories, and you know, there's that camaraderie, you know, And this is what's in work. And the things that I'm going to work on here is the hat a little bit, the hand a little bit. The feather probably needs to be a little brighter. There's little bits and pieces here that have to happen with this painting, but it's getting pretty close.
I love the way the flame flicks upward and then is reflected on the feather.
Right, exactly. And the reflection of the light on his chin, that kind of bright, you can see he's obviously by the fire.
There's a message from Benedict that says, do you still have your art blog? David had or has a blog where he will show his paintings as works in progress.
Right, this one I have not shown the progress on this one. I used to do that in the past. I'd always show the progress on my paintings, and with each session I would take a picture, but I have not done with this painting. So anyway, that's what I'm working on now, and I'll let you guys know when it's done.
What
So
inspires you to paint things, David?
what inspires me? Again, part of it is wanting to document things, feelings, ideas, people. Part of it also is just, I don't know, it's experiences, I mean, my paintings are not abstract. They're not, fantastical. There are things that actually happen to me. And like my period paintings are not painted as period paintings. They're painted as a document of Estrella. I'm not trying to mimic anything. I want to document the event the way it was. So those are my inspirations. Obviously travel and family and all that is all important. These are, I want people to look back on, and I am under no illusion that these paintings are going to end up anywhere. They're going to end up in the family, after I'm gone. It might be a family heirloom or something like that, but I have no, ambitions or whatever that I mean, they could even end up at Goodwill. I don't know. But, somebody will enjoy them, and they will exist on somebody's wall, and somebody is going to enjoy these events as I enjoyed them. And that's my inspiration. That's the reason why I paint. So if this is what I'm working on now, then the question is, what's coming up in the future? So to talk about that, I would like to talk about these three paintings. It's actually a triptych by Paolo Uccello. He was a Florentine painter around the same time as Da Vinci and Botticelli and Michelangelo and all that kind of stuff. And he did this series of paintings about a battle. So Florence was a city-state, and it used to do battles with other city-states. Obviously Italy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there weren't countries at the time. They were just, a city would attack its neighboring city. And this was a particular battle that occurred there that they won. And he documented that. And he did that with this triptych. And the three paintings are split up now. Originally they were done side by side. And now they exist in the Louvre, the National Gallery, and the Uffizi. And my wife and I, when we were in London, went to the National Gallery and we saw one of them. I think it's the topmost one, the one that the top left one is the one that we saw. And these were very inspiring. These are some of my favorite period paintings, from 1460. So how is this inspiring me a little bit? Well, battle. There are scenes of battle. And I have never documented a battle before. Estrella, okay, it's about drinking, it's about wandering, it's about sitting by the fire, it's all that, but it's also about battle. And I have never done a painting about the battles before. And that's what those paintings are inspiring. And so that is one of the things that I would love to do. and it's on the back burner. It's in the back of my head, and it will come forward one day, and I will do a painting about them. What else is there? Well, what do people think of when they see this painting?
Oh,
Sunday afternoon.
Well,
Just like it says.
I don't see people looking at a lake scene or whatever. I see people on the side of the battlefield. There are as many stories that happen on the outskirts of the battlefield of people watching battles as there is on the battlefield. And that is something that I also want to document. That's what I think of when I see that painting. So that's something that's also in the back burner, in the back of my head, that's waiting to be painted.
The one with the cart full of armor has all sorts of emotions that could be painted into that.
Exactly. So that's the end of my slides. This is the end. But before I say the end, I'd like to say, what are you guys working on?
Ah. Well, let's see.
So I'm going to stop presenting here. And I'm going to let you guys share.
Turn your microphones on and go for it, folks.
Okay. I am working on a commission. This is the prototype. Getting it, hold on, let me get it all untangled here.
Stomacher?
the kernel.
There we go.
Nice,
That's the bodice.
nice.
That
Very-
is all hand sewn.
Wow.
That's a lot of work for a prototype.
Well, I have to prove to my son that I can do this because we've got $600 of silk that I'm going to be working with.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
The young lady that I'm doing this for is part, my son doesn't do FCA, he does Renaissance fairs. And his girlfriend got invited to join the guild that does the royal court at 3 of the Renaissance fairs.
Oh, wow.
And I'm building her dress for her.
That's pretty exciting.
It is. I'm teaching her to sew on top of it.
Oh, well, then the hand stitching makes perfect sense.
Yeah. She built her underdress, her corset, her partlet, and I've got her working. She's hand stitching. Instead of grommeting fabric, I use the strips like that. And then I do that.
Makes them look period, but last much longer.
Yes.
Very
And
nice.
it doesn't tear the fabric apart if something happens.
Wow.
These
Wow.
are built to last.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording now so that David's class is kind of compact and we will